The ride of your life is daddyhood.
For those of you who cannot wait and love daddyhood, please head over to our Patreon. We have exclusive access to episodes, we have early access to episodes, and we have behind the scenes footage. Head on over there, sign up, be part of the exclusive daddyhood group, and join us over there. Welcome to Daddyhood. We're on my path to parenthood, as you all know. I just finished the Mom Room podcast, and it was an incredible episode. So this is an extension of it. We love a good part one, part two-er.
Yeah.
So
party time.
Here we go. Renee, welcome to Daddyhood.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. This is exciting, and I'm obsessed with your fruit tree in the front because we don't have that in Canada.
Yeah, well, for everybody out there, we have a grapefruit tree in our front, and there's massive grapefruits. I'll give you some to take back.
Oh my God,
I know
I'm so
you're
excited.
in a hotel, but
okay.
They make for good mixers and drinks.
For sure. I'm excited.
So we like to get things started here at Daddyhood with a dad joke.
Oh.
So if you will entertain me, what is a lazy person's favorite shoes to wear?
I want to say Crocs, but...
You're close.
Okay, what?
It's loafers.
Loafers.
Because they like to loaf. Oh my gosh. Bad dad jokes.
No, it's good though.
It's a classic one. Obviously, we just got into everything about me on your podcast, and I want to sort of flip the script now. Mm-hmm. So you obviously, can you remind me how old is...
He's 5.
Your son? 5 now?
Milo's 5, yeah.
Okay. And you said something interesting on yours. You're like, I don't think I want another. Mm-hmm. What went into that decision? Just because I think what I like to do is like humanize this experience, take the pressure off of the parents of like, you know, even from a young age, it's like, well, when are you getting married? When are you having kids? When are you doing it? It's like, it's so invasive first. But then also people assume after you have one, they're like, oh, okay, when's the second one coming? And it's like this assumption that since you made one, you're going to make 2.
So let me tell you, when I was, let's say, a teenager, I was like looking forward to having a life that my mom had. She had 3 kids. My parents are still married. She was mostly a stay-at-home mom. And I was like, she's living the dream. Like, this is what I want to do. So then I got really into school. As I said, I played volleyball for 1 year, left the team, came back. And then there was no volleyball team at my local university. So I just got right into academics, did a master's degree, did a PhD. And in those years, I was like, I don't want kids at all. I don't want to get married and I don't want kids. I'm going to be like Carrie Bradshaw in Sex and the City.
Hey, I love that.
Then I met my husband and I was like, no, I kind of want to have a kid with this guy. So we had 1 kid. And right from like the moment that they put Milo on my chest, I was just like, oh, things are happening that I didn't expect. You know, you always see on TV and movies, they put the baby on the chest and everybody's like in tears and so emotional and oh my God. I was just kind of like, oh, like here's this little thing that was living inside me for 9 months. And that was my first moment of feeling like a little bit guilty and like, oh, like this... You know, I feel like I should have reacted a different way. But then moving forward, as you said, people would quickly start to ask, when are you going to have like, oh, Milo needs a sibling. When are you going to have another one? And early on, I would find myself responding to that question in a way where it was like, oh, I don't know, like we haven't decided yet.
Yeah.
But in my mind, I was like, no, I don't want another child. Like postpartum recovery and the newborn stage, like the toddler stage, that was really difficult for me. And even though I knew like, no, I don't want to have another kid, I would make up this response like, oh, we don't know yet, you know, because I felt like people are going to judge me for not wanting a second kid and look at me and be like, you must hate motherhood. Like, what happened? Like, why don't you want another one? You know?
Yeah.
And I think it's also important to say that those kinds of feelings are fluid and they change, because there's been probably 2 times in the last 3 years where I'm like, maybe we could have a second, you know, and like kind of flip flop. But at the end of the day, like once I think through everything, I'm like, no, I'm really happy with just one. And you know what else is strange? Like, I have friends that have multiple kids.
Yeah.
And it's also awkward for me to tell them, like, no, I don't want more kids. Because I feel like they're looking at me and thinking that I'm saying, like, I see what you have and I don't want that.
Interesting.
It is so, like...
The dynamic.
Yeah. And, like, probably because I overthink everything, but I go through these things. And at the end of the day, it's such a personal... decision, and like you work through it with your partner, and we are so happy. I love our life. Like, look, I get to, Renee, you want to come record? Like, I'm gonna fly to LA and go record. Like, I love what I do. I love my relationship with my husband. Like, we don't have financial stresses, and I just, it's like, why take a risk and change that in my mind? But yeah, it's such a, nobody talks about family planning and how big of a decision that is. Like, some people go to therapy to try and figure it out.
Just to get on the same page with your partner. I want to hit on something that you said at the very beginning of all this. You said the moment that they put him on my chest, I immediately felt guilt. Was that because you didn't feel prepared? You didn't feel qualified? What was like the going on that made you feel that emotion?
I didn't have the reaction that
you thought you were going to have,
that you see other people have in the media.
Yeah.
And it turns out, like, I'm very fortunate in that, like, I have a platform and I talk about these things. And so I very quickly get reassured that, like, oh no, this is a common experience.
You're not alone.
Exactly.
Right.
So many people were saying, I was the exact same way. You were more kind of a feeling of like you're in awe.
Yeah.
You're like meeting this person that you've you don't know them, and they just like, oh, I'm gonna take care of you now. Like, hi, welcome.
Yeah. So talk me through the conversations that you had with your husband and how he played a factor into your decisions as you were moving through your family. I mean, I think that's also. A lot of people don't understand, like, yes, women carry the burden of the physical labor and birth and carrying, but it takes two to tango, and it's a team effort for the most part. How is he supportive in this? What kind of conversations did you have? And, what did that look like on his end?
So my husband is an only child.
Yeah. Oh, so he was already like, life was good.
Yeah. So he
and how many siblings do you have?
So I have an older brother and a younger sister.
Okay.
So there's 3 of us.
So you're in the middle.
Yeah. He was an only child.
Yeah.
So he never had this pull, like he felt like he wanted to have more kids. Like he was very content with one.
Okay.
And I also think there's something to say about how involved he is and how much he took on when Milo was a baby, because I wouldn't sleep. And this goes like to our conversation that we had where it's like, what works for your family? Because a lot of people hear how we did things and they're like, what? But that's what worked for us.
Right.
So he, as I was saying, he didn't get time off work, and I would go to bed from 6 p.m. until about midnight, 1 p.m. so that I got that solid stretch of sleep.
Yep.
So he'd be with Milo all that time, and then he would come put Milo in the bassinet next to me in bed, and then he would go to bed. He's like a professional sleeper.
Yeah.
I am not. Like, if I'm up once, like, I'm up.
Yeah.
So then when Milo got older and he started to sleep in his own nursery, my husband would do nights, which... He was a surgeon. He's working full time.
Right.
But he could so easily get up, give Milo a little bottle, fall right back asleep.
Yep.
So he was very involved. So for him, the idea of doing that all again is also very daunting.
Yeah.
So it's like having these open conversations and understanding like what the experience was for the other person. And to be honest, like I love our little family dynamic, and it's just, I can imagine having another little human to like give attention to.
Right.
Yeah. It's.
Yeah. I think, and that brings me to sort of the next thing I want to get into with you is just like the pressure that the public, and like you do have a platform, but with that comes opinions and comments and unsolicited advice. And I think that's also important to call out because we're already facing that, as I alluded, in our episode. People are opinionated in how you build your family and what you do and how you do it and the products you use and all of these techniques. Read this book, don't read that one, do this, do that. And it's like, the way that we're going to raise our family as two men is going to look a lot different than yours, and in many different ways.
Yeah.
I'm interested in hearing, how you deal with unsolicited advice versus like advice that maybe you do want to take and how you work through that.
Yeah, I talk a lot about many different topics, but sometimes it can feel like my content gets shown to people that it's going to make them upset almost. It's like I make content for a certain group of people, but sometimes, especially on TikTok, it'll just go to everyone. And so you get a lot of negative comments. But when it comes to advice or feedback, negative comments, something my dad always told us growing up, which I think about all the time, is like, consider the source. So where is that negative comment, that advice, like where is it coming from? Is it
a faceless, profileless person on a burner account?
Exactly.
For the majority of my sakes.
Or, yeah, exactly. Or is it my mom who was like just visiting us and was like, you know what? I think Milo's old enough now to start having some chores that he can do before he has bath time or whatever. And I'm like, you know what? Good call. Like, that's a good call. Like, like things that maybe like we're busy, we're not really thinking about it.
Right.
And so I'm always very wary of where the comment is coming from. And also, like I was telling you, if I'm super confident in, the dynamic that our family has, a choice that we make with regard to maybe the tablets or, nutrition, like whatever it might be. Once I'm set and I'm feeling confident,
this works for me.
It's going to take a lot to make me be like, oh, I feel shitty now. Yeah.
You got to do what's best for your family unit and protect it at all costs.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the rules around technology, because there's so many different things out there. There's so many different studies. There's so many different ways that people want to approach technology and how they're going to integrate it. There's like phones at 8, something in LA is like wait till 8. It's what they use. They wait till the 8th grade to give them their own phone.
How old are people in grade 8?
I don't know. That's a good question.
I think they're 13 or 12.
13 or 14. So that's sort of the rule of thumb out here is like wait till 8. So you wait till the 8th grade to let your child have a phone. I'm interested in like your views on technology.
Oh my gosh. So it turns out my family physician, she her area of expertise that she's very passionate about is smartphones and kids.
Yeah.
Because in her practice, she sees like the effects that phone addiction has on young, and not necessarily young kids, but like teenagers, 18, 19.
Yep.
And I honestly think, I feel for the generation where they were like 12, 13 when smartphones became very common, like everybody had one, because we just didn't know. Like we weren't policing it. We weren't aware of what that was going to do to people's mental health, how damaging it could be, especially during those formative years.
Well, also their attention span.
Oh,
it changed everything.
Oh my God. I can barely watch a movie.
It changed just the landscape of entertainment.
Yeah.
It changed the landscape of marketing, of businesses and how they engage with customers. Attention spans have gotten so short over the years.
Yeah.
Because of technology.
Yeah. And the thing that blows my mind is that smartphones are allowed in schools. I don't know what it's like here.
They're allowed now. We never used to have phones be able to be in school, but now they use them as tools and they do quizzes on them and all these things. I'm like, whoa. But one thing that like we've heard and that I think is going to be important for us and our family is we heard from a young age, if you incorporate, if the child sees how important that phone is to you, they think it should be important to them as well. So being conscious of being on your phone or on devices around your child is a really important step to help with the process of making sure like they don't dive headfirst into technology.
We actually started this thing a couple weeks ago because I started to get so pissed off that I was always carrying my phone in the house. Like, why? Like, why do I wake up and I have it in my hand to go have coffee downstairs? Like, it just drove me nuts. So I got this box that we got from, it was like a home goods store. It's just this wood box that you open up, and I drew on it. It says phones 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. We put our phones in there. Wow. Close the box, it's gone. Because even if it's in your view, it's a distraction. Has your attention span. Yeah. And we'd just be sitting there as a family, and I would be like, oh, like I wonder if Taylor Swift's going to make it to the Super Bowl or something. And my husband there pulls out his phone to try and figure out the answer. It's like you can find any piece of information you want, like at the click of a button. Right. And so you're constantly being drawn to this device. Yeah. And it's basically saying this thing is more important than the other people in the room. Yeah. It's such an interesting dynamic because like for me and for Jordan, we both use it in our work. So we're going to need to be on our devices. Like we work from it. I love it's a form of like how I express my art. And like, obviously I share daddyhood. I share messaging. It's important. It's not going anywhere. But I think I just need to reshift the narrative around how I use it and how I use it as a tool versus like being dependent on it. So, and I think there's something to say about, and this could be, you know, whether you're using your phone or you just want to go take a break, you're going to watch a show, whatever it might be. Yeah. It's important to verbalize to your child that is what is about to take place. Mommy is going to go into the office for 20 minutes. I have to write a few emails and then I'll be back, so that you're explaining your technology use. Yeah. And you're setting that like set amount of time to where I'm not going to be able to play with you during these 20 minutes. Like I'm going to be busy. Otherwise, you're like trying to answer the email while also interacting with them, and you're half-assing both things. Right. So it's like set the time to. Right. Yeah. I love that. Thanks. One thing I'm curious, and I'm going to treat this episode as just like would love to get some motherhood advice. Yeah. You know, I'm torn right now on how I want to handle, and I say I, but we are sort of torn on how we're going to handle the social media. Do we share, you know, our baby and or infant and or toddler and child on our social medias? Do we blur out the face? Where do you lie on that? And how do you draw the line between personal and public? Yeah, it's interesting because you're already a public figure. You already have a massive platform. I finished my PhD 3 days before quarantine. Yeah. In quarantine, started dinking around on TikTok, and then grew a platform, started a podcast, and like now I'm here. In the initial days when Milo was very young, he was in a lot of my content because we were in quarantine, where I was making like funny videos. Once he started to get like 4 years old, it started to feel different for me to put him online because, not to say they're not like a real person when they're like little blobs, but it's different. It felt different. Yeah. And so now I'm just very aware of when he's going to be in something like an Instagram story, what he's doing. Like never would I show his like school uniform. Yeah. Like I'm very aware of that, but that is the trickiest question. And I think everyone's going to have I don't think there's a right or wrong. I don't think so. It's just sort of like what works for you. Yeah. Because I know forth with it all the time. So where are you guys leaning so far? I don't know. I don't have the answer yet. It's really hard. I mean, I think it's going to be a case-by-case basis. On one hand, I feel like I have this platform and I love sharing and I love being vulnerable. But then also part of like, I'm protecting a human that can't make this decision for themselves yet. So like, how do we balance that? I can see both sides of the argument. And I've had people come on the podcast who have like 10 million followers on TikTok and like the account is a lot of their kids. Yeah. They're like 6, 7, but they want to be actors,
Right.
and they want to do like show business stuff. And so in her mind, she was like, you know what? We keep all the money that they make from social media in an account. And when they're out of high school, whatever they want to do, done, paid for.
Smart. I like that.
So I'm like,
But also, like, there's a part of me that's like, I can't monetize my child yet. I don't want to do that. So that does not feel good to me.
I know it's tough. And like, I would do brand partnerships. And at first I didn't think anything of it. Like, I'm not.
Until the brands are like, we need Milo in it.
Yeah. Well, so for the longest time, I was like, he was in ads if it was applicable to him, you know?
Yeah.
But then I was like, I don't want him to be in ads anymore. And then now I'm kind of like, I don't know where I stand on it.
Yeah.
Like, he has his little account, and I know it's such a it's a new area.
Right. Which brings me to my next thing of sort of the term you sort of coined was Momposter.
Oh yeah. Oh, I love
so
this.
talk to me about, well, one, that term, and what I would love to get into too is this, like, the natural instinct for us to compare ourselves to other people. Mm-hmm. I think, you know, obviously being in LA, it's very easy to check on what everybody else is doing in our industry. And you're like, why are they getting that? Why are they doing this? How did this show get greenlit and mine didn't? Or, you know, it's so, you do it in your professional lives.
Yep.
But then you catch yourself doing it. At least you have been very open on comparing yourselves to other moms out there. And obviously you've coined now this word.
Yeah, I love that word
Talk to me
so
about
much. So this was a long time ago. I think it was during quarantine as well, before I started the podcast.
Yeah.
And I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about imposter syndrome, which, like, being an academic my whole life, very familiar with feeling like an imposter. Like, my whole time in grad school, I was like, why am I here? Like, I don't know anything.
Right.
So when they were talking about imposter syndrome, I was like, oh, this is exactly what I feel like, and I'm sure so many moms feel like when it comes to motherhood.
Yep.
Like, you're doing it, but you feel like, I'm not good. Like, I could be doing so much better. So yeah, my very first episode on the Mom Room, which was like 4 years ago, I put it out. It was me kind of just going through different things that give us that feeling, like what contributes to this feeling.
Right.
And so some of the things were like social media, information overload, because my mom, I always talk to her about these things, and she's like, we didn't have that stuff at all, because she didn't have the internet, she didn't have
the kids
social media.
We were raised in a much different way than kids are raised now these days.
Yeah. She's like, I just did what felt right, and you guys are all great.
I was so, like, looking back now, like, my parents used to send me in the grocery store by myself. They would give me $5 and be like, go get a gallon of milk. And they would stay in the car, and I would walk into the grocery store, granted, I grew up in a small town, it was a market. And I would grab milk and come back and have to get the change and have to, like, look the cash register guy in the eye, or girl. And there were so many pros that came from it, but I was like, never could a parent get away with that these days.
I know. We were like playing outside, building tree forts till it got dark.
Yeah,
like,
we just came home when it was dark.
Neighborhood kids just like running all over the place.
Yeah,
I know, it's totally different now.
The landscape's changed so much.
Yeah. And so one of the contributing factors to Momposter Syndrome was comparing ourselves to other parents, and even comparing our children to other children, especially in the younger years when it comes to developmental milestones and all that stuff.
That's what I was going to ask you. Do you mean that more in a development stage or physical stage?
Like, oh, her baby's holding their head up, you know? Like, Milo was like this for like the longest time, but he's fine
Tummy
now.
Time. I'm already learning so much.
Tummy time is the worst time, just so you know. Like, it's very stressful because they're like they don't.
You're like, are you breathing?
I know. But yeah, with regard to comparing ourselves to other people, I think it's very important to consider, it's like comparing apples and oranges.
Yeah.
Like, the one thing you have in common is that you're a parent. And when you consider all the variables that need to be considered in order to make an accurate comparison, it would just go out the window.
Right.
Like, physical health, mental health, the temperament of the baby, financial resources. Do you have a supportive partner at home? How much sleep are you getting? Like, it's endless. And so it's very easy to see another parent and either judge them.
Right.
Or compare yourself to them and then you feel shitty about yourself. But like expand the view of both people's situations. And now it doesn't make sense to even compare yourself to them anymore.
Right. And I think that like as a whole, I wish that would be talked about more.
Yeah.
You know, I think even within, you know, the LGBTQ plus community, it's like our traumas and the way that we've come out are so different from each other. Mm-hmm. Like, yes, we have the one shared thing, but like they should be treated as individuals and on a case by case, like this is what happened and it's unique. We're all like unique individuals that have different timelines. People are going to be ahead. People are going to be smarter. People are going to be taller. All these different things are very real things in our world. Mm-hmm. And comparison is killing people. And I think now, especially because of social media, it's so much easier to compare.
Yeah.
It's so much easier because those people who you're comparing yourself to, you're not seeing the whole picture. You're seeing a snapshot. Mm-hmm. You're seeing a sliver of their life moments. And I'm sure like you've probably had to deal with that too, of like posting the good with the bad and like trying to find that balance of like, do I want to remain like real and authentic or do I want to be like positive and uplifting when I put my content out?
Yeah.
You know, I know like even for me, I struggle. People go to my page and I'm like, who is this? What does he do? Because like I'm all over the board.
Yeah.
I'm talking about like fatherhood at one point. I'm talking about a commercial that I'm directing the next. I'm talking about, you know, different shows that I'm still taking on, different shows that I'm building and creating. Like I'm all over the place. They're like, well, what is he? And I was like, I'm a human.
Yeah.
I do a lot of different shit.
Yeah.
I'm all over the board.
See, but I think what happens with social media, especially like in the parenting space, is like, let's say I follow 10 people. I follow more, but we'll just say 10. Each one of those 10 people that I follow on social media has a niche. They have a thing that they are either like an expert in or a thing that they are passionate about. And that's what they post about all the time. So I'm consuming these 10 people on a regular basis. And now I start to feel like I need to be doing what each of those 10 people are doing all the time.
Yeah.
But they're only doing that one thing,
Right.
you know, whether it be like homemade lunches and homemade dinners. And then the other person is like a professional organizer and her house is amazing. The other one, you know, is really into cleaning and teaching people how to clean, outfits, makeup, hair. And
those
now
are
I'm
all
like,
their full-time things.
Exactly.
And now you're trying to make all of that your regular
I'm
standard.
like, I need to do it all. And like, that's motherhood, but that's also like me as a content creator, podcaster.
Yeah.
I see like it goes the same thing. I see what other people are doing and I'm like, I want to do comedy skits.
Yeah.
Like, Renee, you don't have fucking time to do comedy skits.
Right.
Yeah, but
that's such a brilliant point too.
yes. So
because
we
there is
have
a
to,
borderline though, I will say as someone who is a creative, like there is a borderline of like drawing inspiration and finding ways to implement that creative and inspo and what you're drawing energy wise from that project or from those niches and from that content to integrate it into yours.
Yeah.
And I think that's like where my brain goes, but then also like I get sucked down a hole and I'm like, I want to do this now. And it's like, wait, that's not in sort of my mission statement as like a person, but I want to go do it because I'm bored or I want to have fun.
Yeah.
So
no, I'm going to go to the Comedy Store tonight and watch tomorrow. I'm going to message you and be like, I'm going to try stand-up comedy.
Do it. Go for it. Oh,
this is so me.
And I have to give you so many restaurant recommendations out here. So good. Wait, is Milo coming out?
He's in Vancouver with his grandparents, but one day I would love to take him to
Disneyland.
West Hollywood. No, we just went to Disneyland a couple weeks ago. It was his first time.
Yeah.
It was so much better than I ever expected. Have you been to the one here?
No, I've only been to Orlando.
Okay.
Disney World.
This one is way smaller in LA. The food, incredible.
Yeah.
I couldn't
I've heard
believe
that.
how good the food was.
I've heard that.
And Milo had so much fun.
Universal's right here too, by the way.
Yes, I've been there.
So.
But yeah, because I come here a lot to record,
Yeah.
one of these times I'm going to bring like my mom or my husband with me and bring Milo just to
give him that experience.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
That's what we're so excited. And, you know, I know a lot of people have opinions about traveling when you have a newborn and or infant or
no,
toddler.
that's when you need to do it.
I think so. I'm like, we're going to stack up the travel miles early on. So,
because once they're mobile,
yes,
then it becomes a problem.
And it's a whole then you really have to crank up your support system.
Yeah,
So.
exactly. No, when they're newborn, oh my God, they sleep no matter where they are. Like, that's when you're going to live your best life.
Totally.
Once they start moving, then it's a different story.
Yeah.
But
well, I love how vulnerable you are when it comes to sort of talking about Momposter Syndrome and how, because like I've obviously, you know, there's been times too, like even when we were talking in your episode of, you know, do I feel qualified? Do I feel ready for this? And it's like, yes, this is one of the most intentional things that we can do as a couple and as a same sex couple.
Going into it without these romanticized expectations
Yes.
is a big thing.
Right.
And I also think preparing for the early stages of when baby is actually home
Yep.
versus, you know, worrying about like, oh, is the nursery perfect? Is this that like really like, you know, talk about your relationship. Like, how are things going to change when the baby is here? Like, who's going to do the day to day, like more the logistical things.
Yeah.
I think that would really serve you.
One thing that Jordan and I do a good job of communicating. And I feel like we, you know, unfortunately I get comments like a baby should have his mother. Like we get that sent to us every once in a while. And it's Jordan and I have such a good balance of energies where we have our masculine and our feminine sides, and we're going to really do a good job, I think, of tackling that in a cohesive way, which I'm so excited for.
And one of my favorite quotes is, there's a million different ways to raise a happy and healthy child. And what you will find, or maybe you have already found in the parenting space, is that there's a huge group of people who are really only like black and white thinking.
Yeah.
It's like, this is right. This is wrong.
Yes.
There's no in between.
Right.
And it's so toxic.
I know.
And it's like another quote that I love is that best practice is not best practice for everyone.
Yeah.
You know, because when it comes to breastfeeding, like I was the
Yes.
same way. Like we switched to formula very early on.
Well, we're going to have to explore that route too.
Yeah. And then I was like finding myself like trying to justify to people like why, you know, he's on formula. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I just didn't want to breastfeed. It wasn't working. Like I thought he was having diarrhea. Turns out he wasn't. But I was like, it's just not working. And my husband was like, give him formula. Right. But it's like I needed my husband to give me permission to go to formula.
The partnership.
But like,
so important.
You always hear like breastfeeding is what's best for the baby, but no, not in every situation. Again, because you need to consider all the variables.
Right. I think, you know, obviously having the angle of like motherhood was important for me to like, you know, feel this out. And there's a lot that translates, by the way. Like, I mean, daddyhood, motherhood, parenthood, all the same in my opinion. I mean, obviously differences with how you go through it all, but we always end by asking for some advice. It could be a quote, it could be something that you experienced, something that you went through. Just leave us with some advice.
Whenever people ask me to give advice, the one thing I always say is to be confident in your choices, because that has served me so well. Because there is a lot of noise when it comes to, you know, the unsolicited advice, the comments on social media. And I think to be confident in your choices, you have to give yourself time to sit and think about why you're choosing to do something.
Yeah.
So, for example, like when we switched Milo to formula, like I had to sit and be like, okay, here's all the reasons why this is going to work better for us.
Right.
And then it was an easy, you know, if somebody was like, oh, breastfeeding is better for him, I could be like, actually, no, like you're wrong. Like we're doing great. Yeah. And it's the same thing like when it comes to your relationship, because like relationships can change after you bring a baby into the home. And this is 2 pieces of advice. This is a second one.
Love it.
But
free
like,
advice here.
Yeah. Like people talk a lot about having self-compassion, like having compassion for yourself. And then I started to realize like you need to also have compassion for your relationship.
Yeah.
Because there are different seasons of your relationship. And when you bring a baby home, it's a different season.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of people find their relationship changing, and then they compare it to what it used to be. And then look at their current situation in a
Back to
negative
comparison.
light.
Don't do
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And so it's like just having an open mind and having compassion for your romantic relationship as well.
Evolving and changing.
Yeah, because
life
like
always is.
it's a lot. Like it can be a lot. And if you guys work well together as a team, which it sounds like you really do,
Yeah,
like that's
yeah.
the biggest thing.
Yeah.
It's like teamwork all the way.
Yep.
And it's not going to feel as, you know, difficult because you're with somebody going through it.
I love that. I think it's just meeting your partner and meeting the situation where it's at.
Yeah.
And it's not putting this outside perspective and lens on it.
Yeah.
So beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, what a fun, the Mom Room by Daddyhood.
Yeah.
I love this crossover. I love
Mom
the
room,
collab.
crass, daddyhood.
Yeah, just like the energy and just what you've been through in your lived experience. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being vulnerable. Enjoy your time in LA.
Yeah.
We finally have good weather here.
Thanks for having me. Okay, so when
course.
we came to Disneyland, it was raining for 2 days. I was
Oh,
like,
yeah,
what
yeah,
is
yeah.
this? Like, does LA have rain?
It's been wild here.
Yeah.
LA does have does in fact have rain. Yes.
Somebody was like, the whole city's flooding. I'm like, what's happening?
I know. It's
Yeah.
wild.
So
Well, thank you for joining me.
thank you for having me.
And that's a wrap on Daddyhood.
The ride of your life is Daddyhood.